All right, welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that, let's be honest, we all do pretty much every single day. We're taking a really hard look at why we blindly agree with others and how this seemingly harmless habit actually strips away our defenses. I mean, we live in a world that heavily rewards blending in, right? But today, we are unpacking the psychological mechanics behind this trap of agreement. We'll explore exactly how to build up your self-positioning so you can defend yourself against verbal threats and coercion.
I want to kick things off with this absolutely hard-hitting quote from our source material. It says, "Don't hand over your property just because of someone else's words. Otherwise, your labor and life are too cheap." Wow, it's a powerful statement, right? We're going to use some critical thinking today to really re-examine the psychological mechanisms that make us constantly echo what other people say. And, much more importantly, we're going to learn how to stop surrendering our hard-earned assets to mere words.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by rejecting blind agreement, then uncover the psychological cost of agreeing, define your self-positioning, look at the tragedy of verbal coercion, and finally, we'll build your mental immunity. Okay, jumping right into Section 1, reject blind agreement and the real danger of just blending in.
You know, from a really young age, society pressures us to just go with the flow and minimize friction. And sure, if you're in entirely unfamiliar territory, let's say you're trying to decipher an advanced astrophysics lecture, staying silent and listening to the experts, that's just plain wisdom. But look at the dynamic on the right side, and this brilliantly illustrates the flip side. In your familiar territory, the spaces where you actually have experience and true skin in the game, habitual agreement is absolutely no longer humility. It becomes a dangerous surrender of your own consciousness.
Moving right along to Section 2, the cost of agreeing, specifically the brain's laziness.
So what is actually happening in our brains when we just nod along and surrender our ground? Well, the source material gives us a fantastic term for this: mental laziness. Now, it is absolutely crucial to understand that this is not about a lack of intelligence. Highly intelligent people do this all the time. Mental laziness is simply the refusal to independently process reality. It's deciding that, hey, it's just easier to let someone else do the logical heavy lifting. But the result? You end up completely handing over your own right to judge.
Which leads us to this incredibly stark warning from the author. When you habitually agree, you're essentially broadcasting to the world, I have no stance, I have no boundaries, I am a container that can be arbitrarily filled. Think about how terrifying that actually is. Letting other people dictate your thoughts drains away your authentic connection to the world around you, and it slowly wears away your true self.
That brings us to Section 3, your self-positioning, building your coordinate system.
So what's the antidote to being an empty container? How do we build a real, functioning defense? Well, there's this common phrase, where you sit determines how you think. Usually, you hear this used as an insult, right? Like calling out someone's bias. But in mature social dynamics, this actually isn't prejudice at all. It is your coordinate system. Standing your ground based on exactly where you sit in your familiar territory is a vital strategy for survival.
So, the crucial point is, how do we make this work? You really have to know what makes up your positioning. In your familiar territory, your coordinate system relies on 3 solid pillars. First off, your interest demands, like what do you actually need out of this situation? Second, your professional judgment. What does your own experience tell you is true? And third, your relationship network. Who are your actual true allies? These 3 components literally form your defensive wall.
Because look, if you don't have these pillars firmly bolted down, you're in big trouble. As the text vividly puts it, a person without positioning is like a ship without an anchor. He doesn't know what to protect, nor what to reject. Having a stance is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. What is genuinely dangerous, and frankly a bit embarrassing, is sitting in your own seat but using someone else's brain to navigate.
Let's move into Section 4, the tragedy of coercion, and what happens when you lose that anchor. Now, before we look at exactly what happens when your positioning completely collapses, we need to define our ultimate goal for this explainer: mental immunity. This is the strength you get from having a firm stance. It's essentially the armor that prevents you from panicking, losing your grip, and surrendering your life's achievements just because someone uses threatening, manipulative, or inducing language against you.
Sadly, we have a very sobering real-world case study here. Tech entrepreneur Su Shangma lacked this mental immunity in his personal life, and it led to a heartbreaking tragedy. This was a brilliant mind, completely grounded in his career. But under severe verbal threats and coercion from his partner, his positioning entirely collapsed. Notice the cascading failure outlined on the timeline here. Panicked by manipulative words, he first forgot his bottom line as a law-abiding citizen. Then he forgot his responsibility as an employer. And finally, he lost sight of his fundamental obligations to his own family.
If we analyze this tragedy impartially using the logic of our source, we see that when a person is easily coerced by words, they lack a complete logical closed loop. So is dragged along by a false, destructive logic precisely because he didn't stand firm on his own coordinates. And guys, agreeing with a killer logic that is designed to tear you down is a tragic form of self-abandonment. You are essentially exiling your true self. Finally, Section 5. Build mental immunity. It is time to secure your borders. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the hidden trade-off we make every single day. How do we ensure we don't fall victim to manipulation? Well, blind agreement is incredibly tempting, right? Because it completely avoids the immediate pain of critical thinking and the risk of an awkward confrontation. But here is the harsh truth. Every single time you nod your head just to make the tension go away, you are ceding your own territory. You are trading your long-term security for a moment of temporary comfort.
You literally have to hold your ground. As the source concludes, only by first standing firm on your base can your mind truly serve you and your allies. When you are in your familiar territory, you absolutely must insist on your stance. Even if other people call you stubborn or say you're biased, it is far, far better than drifting along and losing your coordinates entirely. You have to stand firm to protect your property and the people who rely on you from logical traps and verbal coercion. So I'm going to leave you with this one provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. The very next time you find yourself nodding along to an argument, or you're about to blindly agree just to avoid a little bit of friction, take a breath and ask yourself, am I just being polite, or am I giving up my territory? Am I handing over my hard-earned property to mere words? Build your coordinates, defend your stance, and never, ever let anyone make you think your labor and your life are cheap. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you in the next one.